Okay, take two. We're going to try this again.
I, Paul Diffley, hereby call the Board of Education special meeting to order at 10:15 a.m. We have a quorum present with all board members in attendance. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed to the public and recorded. I'd like to welcome the community members in attendance this morning. As a reminder, governing board meetings are a business meeting of the board, held in public, and although public participation is encouraged, it is not the public's meeting. It is the duty of the board president and/or clerk of the board to maintain an orderly, respectful, and peaceful meeting where all perspectives, voices, and opinions are welcome. Please refrain from speaking out while another person has the floor. At the appropriate time on the agenda, individuals wishing to provide public comment on items listed on the agenda will be called upon, one at a time, to do so in accordance with Board Bylaw 9323. The board cannot and will not respond to non-agendized items, but a staff member will reach out to you on matters that may need to be reviewed as appropriate. Mrs. Lund, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I would be happy to.
United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item A3 is approval of the agenda. I call for a motion.
So moved.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. A4, public comment regarding meeting agenda items. Nothing there.
No, we have two.
Pardon?
Two public comments.
Oh, you do have one?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. In that case. We do have one. That's great. Pam Barrett. Welcome.
Hello, good morning. Happy summer. As a former Tovashel Kinder first and second grade teacher and Murrieta literacy leader, academic coach and Hemet literacy trainer in Desert Sands for RCOE, and an academic consultant in Culver City, I have had much experience in the fine art of teaching ELA to elementary school students, witnessing academic achievement in Murrieta and also of schools categorized under program improvement and 100% free and reduced lunch. I was very disappointed to view ELA iReady EOY scores for Murrieta students in 2022 and 2023 on the LCAP for K1 and 2. Wow, only 56% met or exceeded ELA standards in kinder in 2022, and in 2023, only 38 met or exceeded ELA standards in first grade in 2022, and only 40% met or exceeded standards in 2023. And when looking at the first grade proficiency score of 40% for ELA in 2023 compared to the 2022 KELA score of 56%, one wonders what in the world happened during first grade. Math scores were even worse. Knowing the plethora of proven methods and strategies that we as educators have been able to access since 1996. Why are these scores so low at the most important time during the educational foundation of a child's life? It seems to me that maybe the extended day leads could be a golden opportunity for students, parents, and teachers, especially with this laundry list of expectations listed for the position on page 3 under essential functions number 4. The leads will develop and implement intervention and enrichment activities. And under 5, the leads will track and monitor student assessment. It's possible that the extended day program could be utilized to provide additional intensive and targeted intervention to help raise these scores. But I have some questions. Who will train the leads to plan intervention using the research-based systematic explicit instruction of reading, writing, and math? Who will monitor the progress? Who will help the 9 leads train other childcare workers and possible community volunteers in this effort to raise student achievement? Many evenings, I watched parents and students walk past my classroom at 6 p.m. from the childcare room, both observably exhausted. Families knowing that homework was already completed during childcare was always a relief for them. It is my hope that with appropriate training, the extended day leads at each site will not only supervise homework completion, but also provide meaningful intervention, propelling students to greater achievement. Thank you so much.
Ms. Barrett, would you leave that chart on the outside counter so that when the audience leaves, they can
Oh, okay.
take a look at it? Great. Yvette Anthony. Welcome.
Thank you. Just a couple brief comments as I read over the agenda. I had just a couple questions or, like I said, comments. Item consent calendar B2, we're looking to want to add a new position for a compliance officer. And I was just wondering what the motivating need for this was. Are we getting an increase in complaints? It looks like they serve for compliance officer for Title IX, uniform complaint procedure, non-discrimination, and other state and federal regulations. They are going to investigate and resolve district compliance processes, including but not limited to parent community complaints, employee to employee complaints, complaints on discrimination and harassment. So don't we have already people that handle this? I see that person will serve as a member of the superintendent's cabinet. So is it just another person to assist Ward in his job? I don't know. Other than that, I wonder how much this person would be paid and if those funds could be used more effectively somewhere else. So this compliance position, I'm just curious about. My other comment is on item C4. This is about applying for SAB administered programs. And my only thought here or concern was that where on the 4th whereas, it says, whereas Murrieta Valley Unified School District understands that the signing and submittal of forms on behalf of the school district commits the school district to comply with program requirements. So I didn't know what strings were attached. So I just Googled real quick this morning, authorizing school district representatives for SAB administered programs. It says it is important that governing boards of education and school district representatives understand that being an authorized representative commits the school district to many program requirements long after the project is completed. So I'm just wondering what kind of strings come attached to these SAB funded programs. And I'm wondering, I'm sure a lot of federal funds come with strings attached, but I thought it would be good for the community to know for it to be clearly stated or disclosed somewhere when we're applying for things, the strings that are attached, like what are we on the hook for when we take these funds? So I would like more disclosure and transparency on what we are being committed to when we get these grants and funds. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I do. And next we have approval of agenda, call for a motion. We did that. Public comment, yeah, okay. B, now we go into consent calendar, which are items voted on collectively as a group. Upon board member request, items may be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and individual action. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar B1 through B4 as presented?
I would like to make a motion to separate one item out of the consent calendar.
Which item is that?
The item would be the approval of job descriptions, and I would like to handle them differently because I think maybe there's a different time sensitivity. So I'm wondering if we can move the extended daily job description to the action calendar for today. And the director of compliance, I would like to move that to the next meeting as possibly an informational item.
So by rule of order, we can slide item B2 to the action item. And so it'd be dealt with jointly still then. So it'd just be one item.
Okay, fine. Yeah, thank you.
So we'll just move item B2 to the end of the action items.
Okay,
Don't you have to vote on that?
No, that by right, a board member can request a consent item be pulled for consideration. Gotcha.
Thank you.
Yep. So it's items 1, 3, and 4 for the consent calendar.
consent calendar. Okay,
So I move to approve 1, 3, and 4 from the consent calendar.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Item C1, approval of personnel report. Call for a motion.
So moved. Go ahead.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
Great work. That was a big personnel report. I'm glad to see that we're filling positions. Yay. I'd like to do a shout out to a couple of my friends, Stacy Ebert and Nicole Gromkowski, who both got promotions in their positions. So yay. And glad to see all the work being done. Thank you, Mr. Murrieta.
Any other comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion approved. C2, approval of revised substitute salary schedule effective July 1, 2023. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
I have a question. Is this just the ongoing bumping of salaries that we were required to do, or was this a decision separate from that?
So this is handled separately. It's not a requirement. These substitute positions are not negotiated. But in order to remain competitive and stay competitive within the market and continue compensating people and having a good flow or quality candidates, we need to remain competitive. So it's an adjustment upwards.
Right. I was very happy to see that it was an adjustment upwards. Thank you.
Any other comments? I'm thrilled to death. My wife was a substitute for many years and the pay was lousy.
Yep.
Frankly, and it's nice to see this getting up into the range where there'll be more motivation for good people to do the work. But my wife will not be in that group. My arm got twisted here a little bit. All right, I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries 5-0. C3, approval of revised certification of authorized signatures form 335T. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
Was there a change to any of these signatories?
Just because people have changed positions.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. C4, adoption of resolution number 23/24-01, authorizing filing of applications in the school facility grant program administered by the state. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
do want to see if we can respond to public comments on this issue. What are some of the strings that were referenced in terms of these programs? Or are we aware of any longstanding?
The strings that are attached are the ones that we deal with on a regular basis, which is, how we provide for services and how we document student enrollment, all those legal requirements that we already comply with in the first place. And so whenever the state does, because they do this on basically almost every piece of business that we do, every service that we provide from whatever funding source it comes from, if it's a grant funded, federally funded or state funded programs, we're responsible to comply with all of those pieces. And so part of the applications to those is an understanding of what we are required to follow up on. Even once funding has been provided, if we are expected to provide services beyond the life of the fund, oftentimes we have incentive programs, which this is not one of them. We recognize what we're entering into. On occasion, we will choose not to participate because we know we can't do that in the long term. This is a separate issue, though, in terms of the bond.
All right, thank you.
Could you just give a specific of what one of those requirements might be?
As it relates to this item,
Yes, please.
I'm not going to be the expert in this. Jose, do you want to, could you come forward and your assistant to come forward and respond to some of these things specific around this bond? This is Jose Contreras. Contreras, correct? He's new to us, our director of facilities.
Good morning. So somebody mentioned strings attached. It's just basically we're getting modernization money. It needs to be used for modernization purposes and also just making sure that we report back to the state the funds that we're using. That's all.
In the case of this specific one, we're requesting facilities dollars. So when we receive these facilities dollars, these don't go to salaries. These don't go to buy new buses. These go
Okay.
into facilities.
Yes.
And so we're very aware when that money, so keep in mind, board, when that money arrives, it can't go anywhere else but into a facilities project. So as we bring facilities projects forward, it's rolling from a reimbursement from the state into the next facilities project. It doesn't get to go anywhere else. It just goes into a new building.
So the requirements that are being put on us would be that you would report back to them. We use this money to build this building or put in this bathroom or something.
Just reporting back all the expenditures that we use where we're spending the money.
I see. And so it's not any other programming or
No.
curriculum or anything. Okay, gotcha. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So I do have a question. Oh, I'm sorry, over here. So modernization, is that a category? Is there anything that would not be, to a lay person? Is there something about modernization that you've got some legal implications to it or?
No, it's just school modernization, anything to do with the building.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? No. Hearing none, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. C4, adoption of resolution number, we did that. C5, adoption of resolution number 23/24-02, authorizing a use of grants request for the Murrieta Mesa High School project. This calls for a motion.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments? Let's see, we're into the 11th year of Mesa High School,
Mhm.
and we're finally getting reimbursed. Is that?
It's an additional building for Liberty Hall, which the district fronted all the funds to build. And then we're asking for reimbursement and we only get a portion. It's not all of it. So it's only a portion that we're getting reimbursed on.
Well, at least it's something.
It is something.
It's something. Thankful for something. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Moving to C6. Adoption of resolution number 23/24-03. Approval of change order number 1 to Benz Asphalt, Inc. for the Murrieta Valley USD Asphalt Replacement Project bid number 2023-03. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments?
How do we determine who does the work?
So we do competitive bid process. And so there's laws and rules in which we comply with this, depending on the scope and scale of or the dollar amount that we estimate it to be at. And so we went out to open bid, and this was the bid winner. And so this contractor was already approved to do the work. This particular item is a change order, meaning within our contract to do the work, there's already a percent of variability that we can play with. But what we discovered in the work of putting down new asphalt at, I believe this was Warm Springs, we discovered the soil underneath is too wet and it's causing problems in the asphalt. Therefore, the change order allows us to go back and do soil amendment. They're doing a technical process of injecting, I believe it's cement, as Darren described, into the soil below to firm it up. That cost exceeded the variables that we have within the original contract, thus the term change order. If you board members who've never heard the term change order, as we do construction, it becomes a thing. And so, because it never goes exactly according to plan, but we have a process to modify contracts, and this is it.
Thank you for that.
And sometimes it's been my experience that sometimes it doesn't go to the full amount of the
Right.
project contract, which is also nice. Okay, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. C7, approval of 2023/24 school transportation fees. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
I do have a question. It said one way. All of the fares were one way.
No, one of us an annual pass,
Uh-huh.
which is round trip. And then the next one is,
Was the one way. Okay, my mistake. I'm sorry.
And the other costs, or if they decide to do it later in the year, it
Correct.
drops.
so
Prorated.
if something happens, the dynamic or the ride share or
Mhm.
whatever happens, then it can happen later. You're gonna get an adjusted one.
Okay.
Is there you may not be able to answer that, but 10 years ago, could we find out what the average cost of a bus ticket was 10 years ago compared to now?
I can get that information, share with the board.
Okay, might be interesting.
Yeah.
It's not critical. Okay, calls for a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Moving to C3. Approval to award contract to Pickup Sticks Restaurant to provide prepared chicken and rice entrees for the 2023/2024 school year. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
I just have a question because I think we saw an email come through maybe a couple months ago where a parent was, I think, concerned about they didn't want dairy included. I guess I'm just wondering when these decisions are made for nutrition, how, I'm just curious how we, how we accommodate all the many different ways that.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Our director of food service, new child nutrition,
Correct.
Castor.
Yeah, actually Pickup Sticks is one of the restaurants in our area who's really in tune with school nutrition program requirements. So they have a whole grain rice and they have a lower fat. So they have to document all those things and meet our standards, just like any other thing we put on our menu.
And then specifically, if there's individual students who have a specific dietary need, I know that those are also accommodations are made.
Yeah, just like nutrition facts you'd see on any product you purchase, we have to see those.
Thank you.
I have a question before you go. I did get a constituent earlier, and I'm sure you've talked to her too. I think it was a vegan student who was very concerned that the protein was mostly cheese in terms of an option. It was really just an interesting conversation. And in terms of individual dietary issues, I mean, do we look at different ways to try to diversify that, or is there just so much control from the state coming down telling us exactly what to do that we don't have as much leeway to address those concerns?
Yeah, no, we follow the National School Lunch Program meal pattern, and cheese is categorized under protein. So it could be, for instance, like the Pickup Sticks doesn't have any cheese in it, so that's the chicken would be the protein portion of that particular item. So it's our option. There's a lot of commodity cheese out there, so we do try to utilize it for our funding. So a lot of our entrees do wind up having a cheese and a grilled cheese.
And would I be right that protein in terms of like nuts, cashews, et cetera, are avoided Because of nut allergies? Is that a true statement? So, yeah.
We're very, very careful with any allergens that we serve to the students, particularly about putting them on the salad bar, anywhere that there's a common location for kids to.
And is that, but so I'm right, and that's mostly banned then, like, you wouldn't see that on the menu at all at an elementary school.
We like to say that we don't not put those on there, but we want to be very allergy aware of where we put those items. So they're not banned. Certainly we can't control what anybody brings from home, so we've never want to ban anything, but we are very thoughtful. We don't put peanut butter cookies on
Yeah.
our menu because students may, get a cookie not knowing what's in that cookie. So we're thoughtful and
Sure,
aware,
sure.
but we don't ban.
Yeah, okay. And I guess what I'm curious is how much flexibility you have in your job to manipulate menus to help our students locally. Do you feel like you have a lot? Because you said, well, we follow the national. Is that just a norm or a practice, or do you have flexibility?
I have a lot of flexibility.
Okay.
Are you able
We
to,
do.
for example, to substitute in beans or tofu or something like that?
Yes,
You are, okay.
Mhm.
Awesome.
we have a lot of flexibilities.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, we're on the vote for C8. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Moving on to more food. C9, approval to award contract to Gold Star Foods to provide fresh bread items for the 2023/24 school year. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments about fresh bread? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Item D, adjournment, I
No.
call.
Item C2,
Did I miss C2?
we pulled it from the agenda and it comes to the.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thank you very much.
So we need to treat this like a regular action item with a motion and a second.
I would like to move, so I can treat these separately, right? These two job descriptions.
They're currently bundled as one, the way it's presented. I'm gonna recommend to the board that probably, let me do an introduction. Let me introduce them a little bit and give some background to them. That may help understand why they're here and why they've been presented the way they have. Also the process by which we have put them on the agenda. And that may help some clarity in that, then maybe we can go from there to see what we need to do. So as the district has grown and evolved, and also funding for various programs have changed over time, and then change in the federal Title IX law has prompted us to make these moves. And typically this district's pattern has been to put new positions just into consent. They have not been normally listed as action items. That's why you saw them in consent, not in a separate item originally. And so as the district has evolved, what we've also recognized, let's start with the extended day leave job description. There's a new program the state provides to us, the extended ELOP, the Extended Learning Opportunity Program provided by the state in Governor Newsom's recent budgets. It continues to grow. It's a very large program for grades K-6, I believe. I'm looking at James. We are offering extended day or after school programming, most of it run by classroom teachers who are willing to give of their time. And of course they're paid, but some are outside providers like a dance teacher or an art teacher or something like that. They could be STEM, they could be a variety of clubs, a variety of different providers. And we try to coordinate that. And what we're finding is that is across 11 schools, there is so much to coordinate, and the budget is growing very large in the coming years, which means great, it's more services, but we need people to coordinate that. So the extended day lead job description, which we added this year, a principal on assignment, who's Mr. Rob Lurkins, who was the principal at Murrieta Elementary School, he is now coordinating this and interacting with that, but he can't be at 11 places between the hours of 3 and 5:30, 6 o'clock every day. And so he needs someone on site. We need someone on site to help coordinate each one of those activities. And as you can imagine, the school day is coming to an end. You still have a principal and administrators around, but they're also busy with other regular after school activities or parent meetings and so forth. We need an individual who's able to kind of run point and coordinate that program. And so this position is being funded out of ELOP dollars or the ELOP program to help coordinate and deliver that service. And so that's the reason for that position. It's really a lot of coordination there, making sure the services are provided, that the enrichment and extended learning opportunities or intervention programs are delivering on what they're doing. That's being supervised by both Mr. Lurkins as providing leadership there and also Kathleen Israelson. Because Kathleen on the family services side, they may be doing some additional work through the family services program, which goes later into the evening beyond that. So it's actually a very complicated, integrated thing we're trying to figure out. And we just realized that the only way to be successful at that is to have additional people helping us deliver that so we can deliver a higher quality. Again, so this is an outgrowth of the ELOP program, which has come to us. Okay.
So one question, so the additional funds would pay for these new positions. Okay, and then the other thing is, can we address some of the things that were brought up in the public comment about the, the student achievement issues and what, what's happening after school and when kids go home, will their homework be done? And is this all being ordered toward the better test scores also, in addition to what I saw, they'll be going outside and doing some other, nice things, which of course we want them to be able to do that too.
Yeah, that's going to be best addressed with Faith Muchnick, who our assistant superintendent. She's not here today. She's still on vacation, to provide how are those services between the classroom instruction, the intervention that happens during the school day, and then the after school opportunities. ELOP is really intended to, if I understand it correctly from the governor's perspective, is really to just extend the day so kids continue to learn in maybe a different setting that it wasn't their classroom. It's not necessarily, it's not targeted as an after-school intervention program. It is to extend learning, which increases the student engagement, keeps them involved and stay at school, out of trouble in the neighborhood. Or if they were a latchkey kid going home, which we are seeing more of our parents are working, both parents. And so it gives them a place to be longer in the day. And so it's not necessarily targeted to be solely an intervention program, but really an enrichment or an extension. But the specific question that was asked, I think that's best answered by Ms. Muchnick at a later date.
I have, go.
No, go ahead.
So I'm looking at this, the ELOP part, which is weird because that did not have my attention and now it does. That this is a little bit more like an after-school sports program, but it's not just sports.
Correct.
It's dance, art. It could be a sports thing. It could
astronomy,
be,
it
it could be all kinds of things. And what you're telling me is, oops, sorry about that. Spam people get me all the time. Lost my train of thought here. There are teachers who are on assignment at each site because this is K-6. So there's a lot of different sites and they run maybe different programs depending on the site and the personnel at that site.
Correct. And that, so many of the providers who are providing ELOP experiences are classroom teachers during the day. And say like on a Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm going to do the Chocolatiers Club. We're all about chocolate, making chocolate. And so it's just kind of an after school club and it runs for 6 weeks, 8 weeks at a time.
And it varies.
And it varies
From site to site.
Site to site, teacher to teacher, month to month, week to week. We've had outside vendors like let's say a dance teacher who comes and does like at one school site. And
Polynesian dancers.
yeah, and they're there like Monday, Tuesday, and somewhere else they're Wednesday, Thursday, but then they get a full-time job and they up and leave us. And so we have to scramble to find other programming to do that. And so that's why that's why we created the position, the principal on assignment, to kind of coordinate all of that. And then, but we need site leads at each site to the daily routine of that. Like, which room are they meeting in? How do we, because this is happening between the hours of after school, when school ends, all the way until about 5:30 in the afternoon.
To try to put this in, and Linda, I kind of want to let you, but I'll keep going. If I'm the coach of the basketball team, I manage my basketball team because I took on that responsibility and I'm getting paid extra to manage that. So when I hear a teacher has that, I'm expecting that teacher to be like, oh man, Jenny, who's been doing the hula thing, is gone, and now we need to figure out how to deal with this. I don't understand why I need an administrator for that.
Oftentimes it's also some of the folks we're dealing with, it's all of the contracts that we have, especially with outside vendors or even internal staff, the paperwork that's required to complete that time card and hours for service. So there's a documentation piece and there's also requirements of the state on who is participating, because there's an expectation of what demographic of student is participating. And so there's reporting going back to those requirements when we accept funds.
Mm.
So there's a reporting process that goes through back to business services to make sure we have the right, who is participating, how many kids are we offering it to, what are the attendance rates? Then there's also an expectation, because we also need to pay attention to the fact that that student, that child is still within the care of the district, right? And so the school day has ended, but did we take attendance of them? Where are they? What room are they in? And so there's also a tracking of where kids are at. And then at the end, in essence, the second dismissal at the end of the day, which in case the kiddo is, I don't know, parents have a transportation issue, or what do we do with a student that got left behind, or somebody needs to be picked up early? So it's a variety of things like that. These extended day lead positions are not administrators.
Okay, that's kind of where I was getting
Correct.
at.
They're
So
not
Rob
administrators.
Lurkins is in charge of
Of all of them.
of all of it, and he's doing a lot of this paperwork stuff.
Yes.
We're creating a position that's
So one at Cole Canyon, one at Murrieta Elementary,
a lead
a lead.
that's
to-
not administrative.
No, but they have some coordinating responsibilities to make sure that, well, let's say, for example, a teacher who is the basketball coach, who's doing after school basketball with the kids, they're out sick that day. Well, then what do we do? That lead can pick up and take on some of those responsibilities or coordinate what's happening that day with those students.
How much? And this is a full-time position?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, they're there throughout the day.
I'm just concerned in both these instances that we're getting into financial crunches, and to be paying that much money to, I'm sorry, we're already paying someone to run this. And then you're going to add another administrative layer to it, which is it's a significant chunk of change. And we're doing it at multiple sites.
And I recognize the concern that this is funded through available funds through the ELOP program and is a reasonable expense through that program, just description and an allowable expense to provide for that.
Okay, I have a couple points. First of all, I'm going to need a lot more information on this chocolate club that you've mentioned.
Me first.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just kidding. So they've done a version of this. I'm sure it's not quite as intentional at Lisa J. Males for years. And it was more ballet, cheer, basketball, that kind of thing. So not super academic. But I think two points were brought up in public comment that are important and I think worth repeating. Is there, would we have the ability to do some intervention or some academic support during this time? Is it just the ballet, chocolate club, that kind of stuff? Or is it, could we take advantage of some of that and maybe utilize that and leverage that?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah, that
so
can
that's
be
an
done.
option. And then the
Right.
second thing was the accountability piece for training and monitoring. And, I definitely want to see this come back in next year's LCAP
Mhm.
as reporting out what those numbers are, what the changes are. Is the way that we're using the money having positive student outcomes?
So just a point of clarification, this isn't part of we could mention as part of the overall reporting, but it's not, this is not an LCAP funded. This is a separate fund.
Oh, you're right. Okay,
That's
got it.
okay.
Thank you.
So, but still understanding and this was a question I actually had for staff as well, is because we've all been offering the program for a year. We did it this last school year.
Right.
And through our experience, this responsibility was tacked on to a coordinator who already had job duties, Mr. Brent Coley. And so this was provided to him. And so he worked extremely hard throughout the year just to make the minimal program get up and going. And what we've discovered is that as the funding increases significantly, and James, would you provide that information, the dollar amount from year 1 to year 2? Okay. Right. So we're almost doubling in size and doubling in services. And so the point that the district, and this is why the proposal is that we are trying to double service. And that's why we needed the additional bodies in these positions to help coordinate. Please come forward.
Part of the funding requirements are, there's a attendance component. So a certain amount of students it has to be available to all students that are unduplicated to attend these opportunities. And that's the entire extended day, so a 9-hour program. And we have to ensure that at least 50% of our unduplicated students are accessing the program. So we need to make sure the programming is diverse enough, it's in intervention, it's engaging, that kind of stuff, to make sure students are attending. Otherwise, we start losing funding. And so we have to operate the program, but if not everybody comes, we start losing funding for it. So part of the change in roles is making sure we have students attending and the programming's engaging enough so that students are attending those programs.
I have a concern with that. I really do. I had this concern with Avid. I had a ton of kids getting pressured through Avid. You have to do this, and then you have to apply to these 4-year schools. And you have to. And it all came back because the district was getting money, and you're kind of confirming that. Now you have to go participate in this, because if you don't participate, we're not going to get our money. That's what I heard. Now I could be wrong.
For this it's not like.
For
an
this
incentive
program.
For this program, yeah. So it's a matter of matching whatever the community demand is to the programming that we're offering. It's just a kind of a matching, but I guess, in the first year of operation, the compliance requirements are waived as a new program, so we didn't have to meet that this past year. Going forward, we'll have to meet it. And I think there is some flexibility to say, what is the true community demand? I don't think we intend to force it down anybody's throat by any means, but making sure we're matching the programming to the funds that we receive so we can operate an efficient program. Because as you can imagine, operating across 11 sites, making sure those kids that have that attendance requirement are attending could be.
Well, and the state, in some ways, with their money, tends to operate like a drug dealer. Here you go, it's free right now. You don't know anything. Just start this program and we're going to provide all this stuff. And then boom, and they start cutting. And now your community is so excited about Polynesian dance and chocolatiering and everything else. And how dare you cut these programs? You're not cutting the program. The state cut the program.
That is correct.
So I'm
but
a
being
little
thoughtful.
concerned about doubling down on a program when the state is likely to just completely lose a lot of money. We just had that. In fact, last time I spoke to you, it was like, hey, this is not looking great in the next year or so. And I see this getting cut.
Yeah, that was a concern we had going into budget, as all you guys shared. Because the program has been scaling up, we haven't fully spent the allocations we got last year. We got 3 million last year. We spent about 1.2, and so we do have some savings in. Well, that's money we got 2 years ago actually, in operating the program. So there is some cushion specifically in this program without it becoming a burden on the general fund immediately. But I agree, it's a matter of community demand and what if state dynamics change, how do we match the community's expectations with the available programming dollars we have.
Right. I think because the community is probably not the most informed as their kid goes off and does this and think this is great. And why didn't we just keep doing it? It was such a great program. That's my biggest concern.
Did I hear you say, you said intervention, that the program requires intervention? Did I hear you say that?
No,
word?
Enrichment.
Oh, I thought you said intervention
But we
also.
we can do things like, it's wide enough, as Dr. Andrews said, wide enough that you could program intervention. I mean, it's a matter of getting kids to attend. There's no forced attendance, so it's a matter of getting kids to want to attend.
Right. So, yeah, so it's kind of like dangling a carrot in front of people. And so I'm just thinking with our test scores, which, we've been talking about student achievement and test scores and how do we raise the test scores. And so in addition to what Nick is saying about how the money could be here today and gone tomorrow, it just seems like we're trying to attract the community. And yet I'm not really hearing a lot about the mission of a school district and, just getting back to student achievement. I mean, I feel like I've been up here at times talking about different things and, oh, well, it's all about student achievement. And I hear that and I feel like I've sort of been bludgeoned with that. So it's like, what about student achievement?
And I feel like Ms. Muchnick would be better suited.
Well,
than-
she's not
than
here
me
and
to answer that.
we're
Yeah.
being asked to vote on this today,
Sure.
so I mean, I just feel like I don't have a great amount of information to vote on it today.
I understand this program now a lot better. I appreciate you.
Do you need any more questions for me?
I don't have
you,
any.
thank you.
Thank you. Can we move to the administrative position? Because that's
Sure.
that one actually raised more red flags for me than this one did.
Yeah. Let me describe the rationale why we have the Director of Compliance in Title IX. You may recall During the course of the year, we revised our Title IX policies to be in compliance with the federal guidelines. The federal Title IX investigation process changed significantly. It became very taxing and quite time consuming. And actually, you specifically have to delineate various duties and responsibilities to different individuals. Whereas in the old system was just one person was your Title IX compliance officer. Now a variety of people are involved in that process. There's also a greater expectation for documentation of the investigations. What we discovered is, and that's been the experience here in this district, in my year here in this district, is that when we have a variety of complaints, some of them are about students, some of them are about staff, and oftentimes they cross over. It may generate with students, but it really involves a staff member. And so and then we also have on occasion a uniform complaint procedure. And my experience has been we've involved folks from student services with Mr. Dimmler or his staff members. Sometimes it's Ms. Shriver or Mr. Parla of elementary and secondary and their principals doing investigations. Sometimes it's Mr. Monge Roy from compliance because there's a legal implication to it, or it's Mr. Craig Frame or Rich Rideout, his staff, or now our new director of certificated staff, Mr. Daniel, I can't think of his last, Baldwin. And so it's crossed over all these different departments, but it doesn't go to a central clearinghouse. There's not one point person who is documenting and managing every complaint that it comes in. Most of the time it will get delegated to a different place to do that, but there's no one central clearinghouse and one central place to do this. This position's actually been talked about from what I understand. This has been discussed in this district for about the past 2.5 years, the need to do it. The timing of it has come, especially with the change in Title IX, that we feel necessary to bring and establish this position.
And what is that change?
The change in Title IX requirements, their protocols. The federal Title IX protocol and expectation changed in the past 12, 24 months, Rich? Yeah. And actually we're expecting, and so the process changed for districts across the state, actually across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and there's different roles, which would be still delegated out to different people as described, but you still have someone who has to still kind of run point or manage all of them. And I've worked in larger districts where we had to do this, where we had compliance officers because of the volume, because we were a larger district.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're finding is that, again, this is one of those examples of we think we're a small district, but we're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been getting by for the past 30 years with people kind of cobbling this process together. And we've come to a point now where we feel when we budgeted for it, we can afford this position. And the change in the federal law is really what really has pushed us to this point to create this position to be the in essence like a clearinghouse or a common where all complaints funnel to one place and then are resolved by different people and they can be tracked and monitored by one person.
So if I can back up with what you were saying, I should have been looking at the organizational chart. So this position would be under, it would be under
Human resources.
Human Resources.
Mr. Renner.
So Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. And then you mentioned other people who I think are other positions who I think are also under the same umbrella, Executive Director,
Some of them are,
some of them.
but on occasion, like for example, we'll come across something which deals with athletics.
Mhm.
And so we would involve Ed Services and Mr. Dimmler's office, maybe some of our secondary folks, such as Jennifer Shriver or Dale Velk, who oversees athletics, to be part of that investigation.
Mhm.
We've done that informally, but we haven't done a great job. We don't have a solid system in place to track all of those complaints from initial intake all the way to what was the resolution.
Mhm.
It gets a little muddled in between. So we want to create that position that they can log a complaint, know where it went, who's it's assigned to, and when it gets resolved or the documentation is brought back, that it's been completed.
Okay, so these other people may be involved and then ultimately it's going to come back through a central person under Human Resources. It sounds like, right?
Correct.
And so I guess what we're saying is the existing positions that we have, they are not able to provide that point.
No, because they're all in different departments. And
But
so
they're all going to be reporting back to Human Resources.
on the complaint. So for example, if there's an athletics complaint, it may come to that central person. They log that complaint came in. It gets delegated to say Mr. Velk
Mhm.
or let's say it's the backstop is tipping over, or something that's more of a facilities issue. We would involve different people to go and investigate, find out what's happened and come to resolution and then report back to that person.
To the person that's under human resources.
Correct.
And so my question is, the people who are already there, this is not something they could take on.
Correct. Correct. And it really, because they're already, and what we've been doing for so long is it's been added to us. And the litigious environment that we live in
Mhm.
has required more documentation.
Okay.
And so we as a district have not done a stellar job in a documented process by which a complaint comes into resolution. It
Mhm.
gets kind of parsed out. And so
Mhm.
this has been going on for quite some time.
Mhm.
And we're at a place now that that little catalyst was the change in the Title IX law.
Mhm.
Like, okay, we need to do something about this.
Mhm.
And so, but again, this was something that was in discussion prior to me becoming superintendent. And we went through this year, we debated, like, does this live in ed services side? Does this live in the HR side? And we found that in most cases, it involves our employees.
Mhm.
They're part of the complaint. So it made most sense to have this live in the HR
HR.
world. But yet we recognize that any one of our divisions may be involved
Mhm.
in terms of the investigation, gathering information, documenting what they discover, and then coordinating under that person to the resolution, like what are our corrective actions, or that we need to take correction, and how do we communicate that? But then it
Mhm.
all goes back through the central position.
Mhm. Oh, go ahead. So sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, no.
Okay, so my question is, this person would be easily accessible by parents?
Yeah.
With a complaint, because I know, and I agree with you, the handling of complaints has sometimes, I mean, with the best of intentions, has sometimes fallen through the cracks. And you talk to people who say, well, I brought it to the teacher, I brought it to the principal, I called somebody at the district office, and they never hear a resolution. They never, and maybe the resolution took place, but there was not communication back to them. And I understand there are limitations about what we can say, this person, was disciplined or whatever. But so this would be available to just anybody to call up and say, hey, I have a problem with my basketball coach or with my math teacher or with whatever.
Correct. So they'd be available to that. And oftentimes they may be rerouted to start at the lowest level, like talk to your
Sure.
teacher first and then the principal. And if it's not resolved there, then come and we'll take it from here. And so, but they would be available for that.
Okay.
Yeah, because oftentimes, as you know, as board members know, there'll be a complaint, it goes directly to you and you're forwarding it to me. I'm then trying to determine, like, okay, does this belong in student services, or does this belong to HR, or does this, what it does, I can go to that director and say, take this complaint, and they will go solve. They will go and determine who needs to be involved in the investigation. They'll log it, they'll track it, and they will then communicate when we're resolved.
Yeah. So, I feel like, oh, were you going to say something? Go ahead.
I think almost every complaint ends up at your desk anyway. So you're just gonna have to work harder. We just gave you a pay raise.
Can you clone me? It's not bad, it's the time.
I've seen, yeah, I'm ready to vote. I'm not a fan of bureaucracy. I think it's way too big as it is, and I get it. It's a lot of hard work to be administrator. It's also a fat check to be administrator. There are ways that you can handle it at site, and I think people need to follow a chain of command when they have a complaint. They don't. Unfortunately, that's the society we live in, and it's a very tough job, and it's a tough place we live in. This is at least $100,000 increase in funds that go to personnel. I'm not in favor of that position. I'm very leery of the other position as well after I got more information, and for similar reasons. I'm worried that that funding is going to go away, but that's it.
The funding goes away, we'll deal with it then, but I can see the need, especially for these after-school programs. And I do like the idea of working in tutoring and academic help along with the enrichment, but I can see the need for both positions. I do understand the bureaucracy that the district is dealing with.
Ms. Young, when you say dividing it up, the after-school program, does that sort of tend to address that earlier comment that we had from?
Well,
parents who were-
there are a lot of kids that are going home and they're home alone after school.
Yeah,
And there are some kids that could just use enrichment activities. Maybe they're doing fine academically And there are probably others that need help with their academics. So I think it would be great if both were folded into it. And as Dr. Andrus mentioned, this district is pretty big, and I definitely see the need for both positions.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I do have a further comment about the compliance position. So pretty much everything we've discussed today, we are responding to requirements, federal, state, whatever. And I can, I can accept, I'm not a fan of the first position just because here we talk about student achievement all the time, but as regards to the second one, I can accept that maybe the people in HR already have duties that do not allow them to absorb more, but the overriding concern that I have is we are here, we have agenda items that, we are, constantly responding to government. And, I think that, I know personally, I have brought up things in meetings and starting back in January, things that the community wants. And, the community gets to come here and speak for 3 minutes apiece. And, we sort of deal with their concerns summarily. And I just don't feel right about increasing the bureaucracy in response to government demands without giving at least, I can't even say equal time, but equal time to the community. And so there are a couple things that you and I have talked about, Dr. Anderson's community members have talked about that have never ended up on the agenda. And so, out of a sort of sense of justice, people have been going around and talking to community members and getting people to say, we want these things on the agenda. And I think you've heard of both of them. And maybe they won't pass, but this is putting them on the agenda is just a consideration. And so if I would just like to make a motion as regards the compliance position that we delay it until the next meeting. And then we put that along with some of the things that community members want, perhaps as informational items to let the community discuss them. And we hold on to that, we just to have some parity between the community and the government. Because as we see everywhere, the government is inserting themselves locally. They're calling out localities by name, and we are here to represent our community. And so I would just like to make a motion that we delay this one, the compliance one, until the next meeting. And I will not make a motion on the other one, but do we have a second for delaying the compliance one?
So I don't think you get to call for the second, but you did make a motion.
I did make a motion. Thank you. Thank you for setting me straight here in my
We'll
ignorance.
help you through that.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. So President Diffley, she made a motion to delay the Director of Compliance until a future meeting. That would require a second and then a vote on that. And then we could then pick up the extended day lead position.
Okay, I'll second it.
So you're going to second that one as well. Okay. So you'd need to vote to delay that part.
Yes.
So you need to call for the vote.
Okay. We'll call for the vote. Mrs. Lund,
No.
Mr. Pardue,
Aye.
this is only for a delay till the next,
Correct. Mrs. Young.
Mrs. Young.
No,
And then your vote.
We have to
be
ask
unanimous.
for Julie's vote.
Oh, yeah, your vote and Julie's vote.
Ms. Vandergriff
Aye for the delay.
And you.
and I.
Okay, so it's 3-2 to
Three.
delay this part.
We still have to approve 134. Is that correct?
No, we already did that. It was just the discussion about the extended day lead job description.
Okay. Okay. And that passes.
No, we have to vote
I
on it.
mean, we have.
No motion has been made on that one,
Someone has to
right?
Make a motion.
So moved.
Thank you.
But what is the motion?
Is your motion?
Can you state your motion?
To approve the extended daily job description.
Second.
Now you call for a vote.
Okay, call for vote. Mrs. Lund,
Aye.
Mr. Pardue,
Aye.
Ms. Vandergriff,
No.
Ms. Young,
Aye.
and Mr. Duflay. No. Ayes have it. 3-2.
Okay, thank you.
And so can you clarify how this is going to come back to us on the next agenda? What it will, is it going to be an informational item first and then a? Second.
Sure, we
Okay.
can provide that. We'll work through with staff how the best way to present this information. You as board members have the job description. We can work with staff about describe further the need and kind of what that process looks like, the implications of Title IX, the federal requirements. I think that would also, I've described it, but if you saw, I've been through the training for it. If you saw what changed from what we used to do to what we do now, and then also we don't have a formal compliance officer. So every time there's a William Act complaint or any other type of complaint, we don't have a formal system or a point person to clear that. And so there's a need to make that change. As mentioned, this has been an ongoing discussion within the district prior to at least 3 of you being on the board. So it's been a need for a while. We can bring it back for further discussion.
Mhm.
And then Ms. Vandergriff, I'd like to talk to you afterwards possibly about what you shared.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think we're meeting tomorrow?
Yeah.
I think, okay.
Perfect.
And so that could be a formal staff presentation.
Yes,
The
we
com-
could create that
the-
as staff.
The need or the rationale behind the compliance officer position.
Correct.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
And this brings me to a larger question. We have been really adding, I know, we have been adding a lot of people over a period of time.
Mhm.
And I don't want the ratio of personnel versus students to get clogged up
Mhm.
with too many people.
We
Is
are.
there a standard
Yes.
percentage that,
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
There is there is really only a ratio between administrators to students. And we are not anywhere close to meeting that. We are far under.
what is the ratio?
Rich, do you recall off the top of your head? We have to look it up. We can get it for you. We'll provide
We
that.
can get that for you.
Yeah, I like that.
But there's a ratio of students to or teachers. I think it's teachers to administrators is the ratio, not students. And so there's a ratio. And I believe my last check is I think we were under that by about 20 positions.
Okay.
So we've been a rather efficient group because we've had to be. Because our budget is tight, because we don't have large extra LCAP budgets, or we're not, because the nature of our students were funded differently, we've had to be very, very efficient.
Can we be clear on why we get funded differently?
It has to do with the type of student that we have, the
What
demographics.
Yeah, tell me more about the demographics that puts us out of the loop for funding.
Sure. Actually, the expert on this one, maybe James, if you want to come up and help with this, I'll get started. So the state has a metric which they call an unduplicated count.
Describe that unduplicated for me, and
Yeah.
just in plain terms so that the average citizen can know exactly why we don't get paid very well.
So any student that's eligible for either a free or reduced price meal and meets the income eligibility guidelines, so it's a poverty measure, or any student that is an English learner gets counted as an unduplicated count, is in addition to foster youth and a few other like very small categories. Those are counted. You're only counted once. So if you're an English learner and you qualify for free meals, you only get counted once in that count.
Does that influence teacher pay?
It doesn't, I wouldn't say it directly influences teacher pay, but it influences our ability to fund really anything.
Administrative?
No, I mean,
doesn't-
it determines
it-
our overall funding that's available that then determines
For the program.
programming decisions and everything else that gets presented to the board.
And isn't it that we have to meet 55% of our population is unduplicated to get that jump in funding?
Yeah, so the state funds any unduplicated students at a certain percentage, that's supplemental funding. And then once you hit the 55%, that you get concentration funding, which is a 50% bonus on funding per student.
So we have been tracking that and we've been historically only around 35%.
35%.
Prior to last academic year, we changed the registration process and in the registration process, families were online were able to provide more information. We captured a greater percent of that information. And we discovered that our unduplicated count is actually higher, closer to 52%.
Closer to 50%, yeah.
Yeah, closer to 50%. Now it takes 3-year running average, the way the state funds it, until we actually see the full financial benefit of being at 52%. But what the board and the committee would know is that there's a greater need of these students who we call unduplicated, meaning they have one of these demographics, meaning they're a low socioeconomic, or they're an English learner, or they're a foster homeless child. And so those are really the three, and that's how they get measured.
Yep.
But anything else?
Nope.
Good question. Thank you.
Okay. And mine, I'm just worried that we don't go beyond the pale when it comes to hiring.
We won't let that happen.
Okay. Otherwise I'll beat you up.
That's fine.
Okay.
And also that we just keep in mind our primary mission, which is student achievement.
Yep.
Yeah, and yeah.
Especially with the numbers that we heard at the beginning in terms of ELA and math and so forth. All right, let's see, where are we at?
During the meeting.
Okay. I thought we'd stay through lunch. All right, item D, adjournment. I call for a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Wait, can I make just a quick comment? This is just a personal thing. My phone died yesterday, and in the transfer, I've lost about half of my contacts. If you have my phone in your contact, please text me and say who you are so I can start rebuilding that. Thank you for my personal announcement.
That's a good thing.
Oh, it's horrible, and I'm really stressed out about it.
Motion and a second to adjourn the Board of Education meeting at
We did.
11:22 PM. AM.
So moved.
Morning. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all.
I've got to run. I have to be somewhere. Oh.
And there's some things about cell phones there for your nighttime reading.
To be shared with me, Julian and Dan, the sharing process. That is what you were talking about at lunch last.